This map shows the Mongol Empire expanding outward from a central point across Asia and Eastern Europe. In a single lifetime, Genghis Khan commanded armies that swept across the continent with staggering speed, claiming more land than almost any ruler in human history. Yet the man who conquered millions of square miles of the earth left almost no physical trace upon it. Genghis Khan died in 1227. Today, nearly 8 centuries later, nobody knows where he is buried. Historians believe he died in northwestern China during a military campaign against the Western Xia dynasty. The exact cause, whether a fall from a horse, illness, or assassination, remains disputed. What is certain is the Mongols immediately threw a blanket of absolute secrecy over his death. The fact that no confirmed tomb has ever been found is not a mistake of poor record-keeping. The absence itself was a carefully engineered void. According to ancient accounts, an elite funeral convoy carried his body back toward Mongolia across thousands of miles of open land. To ensure the location remained a secret, these soldiers executed anyone who crossed their path along the entire route. The violence continued at the final destination. Legends claim that once the burial site was finished, the laborers who dug the grave were immediately killed by the soldiers. Then another group of soldiers executed those executioners. They didn't stop at silencing the witnesses. The Mongols reportedly rode 1,000 horses back and forth over the site to trample the earth flat. They planted trees over the fresh soil, and some stories suggest they redirected a river to cover the burial ground permanently. Every modern archaeological hunt for Genghis Khan is essentially an effort to unravel an 800-year-old violently enforced cover-up. The search usually centers on the Khinti Mountains in northeastern Mongolia, near his childhood homeland. The vastness of this rugged terrain acts as an imposing physical barrier. This region is defined by frozen rivers, dense forests, and endless grasslands. Over centuries, Mongolia's extreme weather cycles and shifting soils naturally eroded any subtle traces of human disturbance that might have survived the initial burial. Researchers have countered this harsh geography with a modern arsenal. Teams deploy ground-penetrating radar, fly drone surveys over massive grids, and use artificial intelligence to analyze subtle terrain anomalies invisible from the ground. In 2001, an American-led expedition used radar to detect underground structures near the sacred mountain for Khan Khaldun. But intense local opposition and political pressure quickly stopped the excavation, leaving the findings entirely inconclusive. Even with satellite scans, the sheer scale of the Mongolian steppe proves nearly impossible to search. The Mongols weaponized the unconquerable vastness of nature, turning the landscape itself into a vault. Beyond the physical geography lies a highly restricted zone historically known as the Great Taboo. For centuries, a group of elite guardians called the Darkhad strictly forbade outsiders from entering this sacred ancestral territory. Even today, teams working near these suspected zones report strange phenomena. Vehicles break down unexpectedly, equipment fails in the cold, and workers suffer sudden illnesses, fueling old legends of a supernatural curse protecting the tomb. While Western researchers view the tomb as the ultimate archaeological prize, many Mongolians see it differently. Disturbing the grave of their founding figure is considered spiritually dangerous, an act of desecration rather than discovery. Science can nap soil and rock, but it struggles against cultural reverence. Genghis Khan remains protected by a lingering wall of psychological fear that actively resists intrusion. What if the failure to locate the burial site isn't a failure of modern technology? Some historians argue this total invisibility was Genghis Khan's final, calculated strategy. The Mongols were masters of psychological warfare. They regularly conquered cities without a fight because rumors of their ruthlessness paralyzed their enemies long before the armies ever arrived on the horizon. This schematic illustrates a simple military reality. A visible monument is a vulnerability. If a tomb can be seen, it can be desecrated by rival factions. But a grave that remains entirely hidden projects an aura of invincibility. By erasing his final resting place, Genghis Khan ensured no future conqueror could ever stand over his remains in victory. He transitioned from a mortal king into an untouchable myth. Look at the Egyptian pharaohs or ancient European kings. Their elaborate tombs were eventually plundered, and their remains now sit isolated behind glass cases in museums. To pull Genghis Khan from the dirt would reduce a legendary force of nature to a collection of bones and artifacts. The unbroken silence of the empty grasslands is proof of his success. He disappeared so completely that history itself can never reclaim him.